Hey, everybody, welcome to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. I'm Kristi Brower, here with my co host, sister, and partner in crime, Katie Weaver. Hey, Katie,
Hello.
how's
How's
it
it
going?
going?
Oh, well, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I am way good. What can I say? Doing my regular stuff, making
There you
stuff.
go, doing your regular stuff. Okay,
I'm good.
good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm good as well. I've been doing a lot of keto cooking and baking. Been having a lot of fun with that. I'm
I
just getting
know.
better and better at it. The longer you do the super low carb life, the easier it gets
Hmm.
as you get smarter. You know what I made this week? Well, because you tried them. I made
Yeah.
marshmallows. I
Yeah.
was missing, like, having marshmallows and hot chocolate or coffee in this wintertime,
Hmm.
and so I found a recipe to make them, and it turns out they're super easy, and they are fantastic, and
They turned out so good.
didn't they? I was amazed, and they're really,
Mhm.
really good. I had one in my coffee today, and it was delicious, and it was 0 carb, which is,
Yeah.
the life I lead, so that was awesome.
Hmm.
I'm really
Super
enjoying
good.
that.
Well, you made some really good orange cranberry quick bread too. That
I
was
did.
delicious.
I did. That turned out really well too. It was the first time I've baked with, raw cranberries, like, just fresh ones.
Mm-hmm.
I've made, like, cranberry sauce and stuff with them before, but I'd never really baked with them, and that was interesting, but man, they turned out so good.
Super good.
It's always good when your baking endeavors turn out good instead of like, "Oh, this
A
goes straight to
nightmare.
trash."
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting better at choosing keto recipes. Like, I
Hmm.
read through them and I can immediately go, "That is so not gonna set up," or
Mhm.
whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Or
getting
that's
way
gonna
better
be
that I choose.
a yeah.
Yes, or too many eggs. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Some people's version of making, keto baking is to
Yeah,
just, basically make omelet-y kind of no.
yeah. Basically, scrambled eggs with chocolate chips.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's not good. It's
Oh,
not good.
no.
Don't do it, don't do it. You gotta go a little more detailed than that, but
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying that, and as it's getting cold and winter here as it is, I'm baking more and cooking more anyway, just because
Yeah.
I do more when the weather is cold, and so I've been really enjoying doing that.
Well, good job. You rock.
Yeah, thanks, it's been fun. Well, as you know, this is a cold read case for you. So
Yes.
I'm going to present you a case, and you're gonna give us a cold read on it. So if you
Yep.
haven't seen us do this before, I lay the case out for Katie, and then she's gonna tell us what she thinks happened to this person. I do give the majority of the details of the case because that's not the point of the read. The point is not the details, it's what is the final outcome,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. So we present this a little bit differently than some other psychic shows do. Um, we know that by, comments on YouTube. Um, but it is, the final outcome is really our concern. It's not the details of the case because that information can be found anywhere. It's about,
Mhm.
an unsolved case and what's happened to this person. So we're going to talk about Jennifer Kesse. Jennifer Kesse went missing on January 23rd, 2006. So she lived in Florida. And on the day of her disappearance, it was a Monday, she had been on vacation with her boyfriend. And on Sunday night had stayed at her boyfriend's house and then went to work from his house. So she hadn't been home since the vacation until after work that day that she went missing. And she did go to work, and she left work at 6 p.m. People saw her, at work. She talked to her dad on the way home while she was driving home from work at about 6:15, and then she talked to her boyfriend on the phone about 10 p.m. that night. So she was really in the habit of reaching out to her boyfriend in the morning before she left for work, either calling or texting him, and she didn't. And that was the first indication that something was wrong. He was surprised, and so he called her, and her phone went to voicemail. He kinda didn't think anything of it because he knew that she had a meeting that day, and so he thought maybe he'd just caught her in the meeting and she just, was running late or something.
Mhm.
But then she didn't show up for work, which was really unlike her, and her parents were her emergency contact at work,
Mhm.
and so her job called her parents.
Mhm.
said, "Hey, we don't know what's going on, but we can't reach her. She didn't come to work. It's really unlike her." She worked in finance, and her parents were immediately really concerned because she had very regular phone contact with her family and
Yeah.
with her boyfriend, like, every day kind of
Mhm.
contact, kinda like your adult kids do.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so, if you didn't have that, you would know something was wrong because that was
Mhm.
way out of character for her. So
Yeah.
her parents lived 2 hours away, and they drove to her apartment, and her car was not there. They went in her apartment, and it just seemed like everything was pretty normal. There was a towel that was wet, like, she'd obviously had a shower, some things that had indicated that she'd been up and ready getting ready for work
Mhm.
that morning, but had not made it to work. So they put flyers out all over for her, and then the authorities, the Orlando Police Department, had organized a bunch of search parties. They looked for her on foot, on horseback, by boat, helicopter, car, and ATV.
Wow.
So big search happened quickly. Lots of people out there looking for her. They initially thought maybe she had been abducted while as she was walking from her apartment to her car. That was the initial kind of, you know, uh, theory, is that
Mhm.
she'd been abducted there. There'd been some
But
things
her
going
car was gone, right?
her car wasn't there, yeah.
Mhm.
So a couple of days later, they find her car at an apartment complex about a mile from where she lived, in a kind of known to be unsafe part of town. Apparently, someone had seen her car, a description of her car on the news, and had
Mhm.
realized that the cars, meeting that description, had been sitting in the parking lot of their apartment complex for 2 days.
Mhm.
So they call the police and let them know that the car is there, and they go and, they do a forensic exam of the car, they take pictures of the car, and they find on surveillance footage of this apartment that somebody drives the car in and then walks out of the parking lot.
Mhm.
Here's the sad thing about this. So the surveillance footage was not like a continuous feed. It was a took a picture every 3 seconds kind of camera.
Mhm.
And there was this big black, like, wrought iron fence, and in every single picture, that fence is obscuring the person's face.
Oh.
And the feds tried to, clean up the pictures, and nobody could. They could not,
Mhm.
um, they could not ever get any, actual description of that person other
Mhm.
than they were between 5'3" and 5'5" tall. 5'3" 5'3" to 5'5" tall, so
Mhm.
not super tall. Um, let's see, what else did I wanna tell you? So they considered that person a person of interest, but they didn't actually know who it was.
Mhm.
None of her friends or family from the pictures that they did have thought that this was somebody that they knew.
Mhm.
Didn't seem, didn't
And it
seem
wasn't
familiar.
her. Yeah.
No, it wasn't her. It was a man. They believe it was
Mhm.
a man. It was a person with short hair, anyway.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that had been going on in her apartment complex is there were all these renovations going on. And some of the people working on the renovation were actually living in some of the apartments in her complex. And she had said to her family that some of those men made her uncomfortable. And sometimes they were actually in her apartment doing renovations, and that she would call someone, her family or her boyfriend or somebody, and, like, stand in the doorway and just talk on the phone the whole time because she
Mhm.
didn't feel safe around them. I guess there'd been some catcalling and some things going on with these workers that made her feel, a little bit, uncomfortable around them.
Mhm.
And so there were some questions about, were one of these workers involved with this? They're really in the forensic examination of the car, they didn't find hardly anything. They found one print, and they called it a small DNA fiber. I have no idea what that means, if it was skin or something, but really not anything in the car. They did use a search dog, and the search dog tracked the scent that led from her parked car back to her apartment complex. And so They think that whoever abandoned her car walked back to her apartment complex, which may have been where their vehicle was. They did feel that the car had been wiped down.
Mhm.
Some things that were missing: her cell phone, her iPod, her keys, her purse, her briefcase, and whatever clothing she was wearing that day are the things that were missing. They couldn't ping her cell phone, it was off, it was never turned back on, and
Mhm.
none of her bank account information was ever used, nothing ever indicated that she popped back up in the world.
Mhm.
So, of course, investigators, looked at her family and friends first.
Sure.
There was an ex-boyfriend that they looked at because he was kinda wanting to try to get back with her, but they basically cleared him, that there wasn't anything that indicated that he had been involved. Her current boyfriend had an alibi,
Oh, yeah. It wasn't
and
him.
so it wasn't him, no.
No.
Um, so they did kind of focus on the idea that maybe it was one of these construction workers, but they never could find anything definitive there. They did say that there was a real language barrier there and that not all of these construction workers were English speaking, so they couldn't interrogate all of them. I found that weird
Right. You don't have
because,
an
um,
interpreter?
yeah, you can't get a hold of an interpreter or use a service or something. Like, I found that strange. Like, are you really not trying very hard, police, that you can't interrogate these people because they don't speak
Mhm.
English? Like, I people always you see that kind of thing happen all the time, and they reach out and they get somebody to come in and interpret.
Mhm.
That's get to your local university in the language department, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, so that didn't go very far, which I thought was kinda odd.
Mhm.
They did question her coworkers, and there was a manager that she worked with who wanted to be in a relationship with her, and she turned him down. They did kinda look at him pretty heavily and interviewed him a bunch of times, but they eventually
Mhm.
ruled him out as
Well,
well.
which is interesting. That's interesting to me, and the ex-boyfriend is interesting to me because my hit is that this is a man that was trying to engage a relationship with her.
Mhm.
I don't feel like it was either of those 2 men, but I do feel
Okay.
like it was someone who had been kinda stalking her from afar for a while that she had turned down in the past. She was beautiful
Mhm.
and
True.
desirable in lots of ways. She really had her shit together. She was high flying.
Mhm. She
And
definitely
and I feel like this person, I keep wondering if this is someone she went to high school with because I feel like he knew
Mhm.
her for a long time and that she
Okay.
maybe dated him briefly a long time ago, but really didn't have any interest in him anymore.
Mhm.
I absolutely agree that he grabbed her in the parking lot at work. I feel like, or at home, I feel like when she got into her apartment or into her car, that he was right there and climbed in the car with her, just before
Okay.
she could really stop him.
Mhm.
I feel like he had just been fired from his job. There was some big emotional turmoil in his life that triggered
Ah,
him. He already had
okay.
been obsessing over her for a long time, had, been trying to, maybe pick something up with her. I don't think it was the workers there at all. I
Mhm.
feel like, and maybe the police really didn't either because I don't feel like it was, but I do feel like
Mhm.
he got into the car with her, whether she let him. I feel like what happened is that she unlocked her car to get in and he just hopped in with her, quicker than
Mm.
she could prevent that.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, this isn't one of those cases where I feel like the victim died that day or died immediately. I don't.
Mhm.
I
No.
feel like he kept her alive for a few weeks
Oh.
or a couple of weeks. Let's not go too far. I feel like he
Mhm.
he did keep her alive for a certain amount of time, kind of playing house with her, trying to force her to be his person.
Mhm.
I do feel like eventually he did kill her.
Okay.
And I think every time I look at this, I feel like he actually may still have some of those belongings, like the
Okay.
briefcase and that kind of, some of those belongings. I feel like he kept some of that stuff in his home. Um, her body, I feel like actually ended up in a landfill or a dump or something like that.
Okay.
Um, I feel like it's possible that that body could have been found at some point, though it sounds like it wasn't, but which is really too bad. But I feel like he disposed of the body in a pretty unceremonious way.
Mhm.
I, I'm kind of surprised maybe that it wasn't found, but that's what I feel is that's what I'm seeing is piles of garbage, of refuse. That's
Ah,
where her body ended up. It's a place
okay.
like that. Um, at any rate, but yeah, I still think he has some of the stuff.
That's
And I'm not convinced that this won't be solved at some point. I feel like it could be.
mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because some new evidence came to light only 3 days ago
Oh, wow.
in this case. First of all, there was a witness who saw who they believe was her in her car fighting for the steering wheel with someone else
Okay.
on the day that she disappeared. But now, some evidence photos have come forward. Fox News in Orlando got a hold of them that suggest a violent struggle took place on the front hood of her car,
Ah,
and it looked like someone was thrown down on the top of the hood, like their arms spread out and then dragged back almost like off the hood to the point where you can see that they were, like, grasping at the hood.
mhm.
So they've released these photos to the public in hopes that they can get some help. Now, interestingly, Drew and Joyce Kess, who are Jennifer's parents,
Mhm.
sued the Orlando Police Department in 2018 for all the records to date in their daughter's case. They felt like the police have not worked nearly as hard. There actually is a law in Florida that was to change the way that missing persons cases were handled that is called the Jennifer Kess and Tiffany Sessions Missing Persons Act, because
Wow.
this was handled poorly, um, and, all along, they felt like the police just were not doing anything.
Mhm.
Um, they did win. There was an agreement reached, and they
Mhm.
got 16,000 pages of records.
Wow.
This was back in 2018, but somewhere in there were these pictures, which I think is really interesting.
Mhm. For sure. Wow.
But at this point, still no resolution, but like you said, there
Yeah.
is still, potential here to solve this case.
Mhm. I think so. I think it's possible. I wonder too if someone else will come across that her stuff because he has some of her stuff,
Mhm,
and that somebody will come across that and you know recognize that this is maybe not even who this belongs to, but it doesn't belong to him, you know.
mhm, sure.
But
Well, and I think if you came across, I don't know, an iPod or a cell phone from 2006, you might have some questions
mhm.
because that's some pretty old tech.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in the briefcase with like her work documents and stuff like that in it,
Yeah,
you know,
and
that
her purse with her ID and that kinda thing.
mhm,
Like, those
mhm,
are things, yeah, that could, really unravel this situation.
mhm. Yeah, most definitely. Well, and when he got in with her, when they managed to get in her car, he drove her or made her drive to his house. I mean, this was just from one place to the next,
Mhm,
and that's where he held her, and unfortunately until she died, and then he disposed of her body. But yeah, I have hope. I have hope that this case will be solved. I feel like it can be.
mhm. Very interesting. It does seem like maybe some movement is happening.
Hmm.
And that was the belief all along that whatever happened was very quick.
Hmm.
It happened very quickly, and there was
Yeah.
very little evidence left. But, yeah, I mean, the
Hmm.
actual I guess the car is kind of a crime scene, but
Hmm.
really, wherever he held her was the crime scene, and they've never had any opportunity to see that because they haven't found it.
Right. Yeah.
But the Kess family is, very actively still working to investigate her disappearance
Hmm.
and figure out what happened to her because they feel like they've had to take it on themselves.
Hmm. I feel like they'll hire a PI that is a retired police officer, not
Mhm.
from Orlando, of course, but from somewhere else,
Mhm.
who is extremely good at what he does, and he'll be the one that helps them to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
Because 16,000 pages of records is a lot to sort through. That's a lot of leads and dead ends and, so on and so forth. But I feel like this is somebody who has a vast amount of knowledge of, law enforcement as well as solving cases that I have a lot of hope. I still feel like it can be solved.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, they do too, they have had an ongoing GoFundMe page to help them pay for investigation. They have
Hmm.
hired PIs,
Hmm.
and her dad said, "We don't care when, we don't care how, and frankly, we don't care who. We just
Yeah.
want our daughter back for the good or the bad. We miss her
Yeah.
every day."
I'm
And
sure
so
they do.
they're certainly the Kess family is certainly not giving up.
Yeah. Good.
And so,
Good.
we think we can do our small part here by telling this story and putting that word out there again,
Yeah.
in case somebody sees something, when you see something,
Yeah.
say something, right?
Most definitely. Even if it seems insignificant, you don't see the entire puzzle. And so even if what you see or what you saw or what you heard seems insignificant, it might not be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it might not be. So
Yeah.
that's important to know.
Well, holding a lot of love for the Kess family and a lot of hope for them that they get some justice.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
most definitely. Most definitely. And I agree with you. I feel like it will come.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on this case. And
Yes,
if
we will.
hopefully it's when we get to come back later and report as solved. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It was very interesting to see that there's an update only 3 days ago from a
Mhm.
case from 2006. Obviously, there's movement happening in the
Mhm.
investigation that the family is funding, so
Yeah.
that's
One
good
last
news.
notice that I do think that this guy acted alone. I don't think anyone else had anything to do with this. This isn't
Okay.
something that other people knew happened or that he had help with or anything like that. This was singular.
Mhm. But now somebody might notice something that
Right.
could help. So that's an important part
Mhm.
of it. One of the reasons we like covering true crime and unsolved cases is because we hope that if nothing else, that we bring up a case that's been hidden for a long time. You never know.
Absolutely.
We've
Hey,
seen
it's
that happen
it's
with some other cases recently, and I think it's really important to remember that, there are always family and loved ones and friends out there missing somebody and wishing that this case would be solved.
absolutely. And a signal boost is always a good thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it definitely is. It
for
definitely
sure.
is. Yeah.
Well,
All right.
okay.
Well, thank you for your read, Katie. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Well, as you know, you've been listening to True Crime Paranormal with the Psychic Sisters. You can find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook fan page and a discussion group where we love to talk about the cases that we are working on and all kinds of other interesting things with our true crime fans. So be sure to find us there. And we are on Patreon. If you would like some extra content and would like to help support us in doing what we love, please join us over there as well. And thank
Sounds
you
good.
for listening, and have a great day, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Take care.